Welcome back once again to the Blue Shark Show. Today we're going to do an episode on the City Council. And this is July 20th, 2021 City Council meeting. And there's a couple of agenda items. Under 4.1 we have City Council to issue encouraging statements to recognize the city staff. And then also, if you look at number 8, under City Manager Information and Operation Report, under update on various drainage matters within the city, and it's a nice way of putting sewage issues.
Yeah.
So Nate, you want to take us into the 4.1, the encouraging statements for the city employees?
Yeah, sure. So Trish Reiner put this on the agenda from what I understand, and it was interesting because rather than really leading in with the positive statements about city employees, it was more of a, well, it kind of reminded me of watching the election results come in 2016, you know, when all the anchors are sitting there like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened. It was basically everybody on the city council was astounded at the results and making up all kinds of excuses for why, you know, Jim Jarrett won his election the way he did.
Yeah, and it seemed, you know, if you go back and watch the video, a lot of them were kind of confused as to what the purpose of this agenda item really was anyway.
It seemed like they were confused maybe, but listening to a few of them, they said, well, I didn't really know what we were doing here. That's usually indicative of, no, this was pre-planned and they all knew it was going to go down like this.
There are a few people in the community who have chosen over the past few months to focus on criticism and negativity, yet city employees continue to perform their jobs with grace under pressure.
And really what it, to me, looked like when Trish put it on the agenda and then each city council person started to speak, it was the old straw man agenda. It was, hey, you city employees, you've been picked on during this election. The city employees, you know, people have been mean to the city employees. Not at all. They were talking about Tony Mobley and what he has not done for the city, and when has accountability turned into negativity?
I'm not sure, because when you take an elected position where you represent the citizens and you're supposed to do what's in their best interest, it's par for the course to be held accountable for your actions. And if your actions aren't lining up with what's best for the citizens, then you can expect to get some backlash.
Yeah, and you know, rather than take ownership of their failures over the years, what they decided to do was say, oh, they're picking on the city workers. They're so rude to the city workers. I was very much paying attention to what was going on during that campaign, and that was not the case. It was all aimed at, well, I take that back, with one exception, perhaps city manager Chris Kaufman, who many would agree has done a very poor job as our city manager. Under his leadership, the infrastructure crisis has come into play. A lot of it was directed at him. So that's fair. I guess, you know, it was that one city employee.
Yeah, city employee, not employees.
And the way they brought it up during the meeting was that, oh, people are just coming in and being so rude to all the employees and stuff, which, I mean, anytime you have a customer-facing position, that's going to happen. Anyone that's worked retail, food service, whatever, they'd know that.
Yeah, and that's in any retail, any public interaction with the public as a government worker. He works at the direction of the city council, our elected officials, and under their direction, if he's not doing the job they want him to do, then it's accountability time. It's not negativity, it's accountability time. You tell him what we need, find a solution, and let's do it. But if you look back at the infrastructure, we don't have any solutions for that. And it's been years and years and years in the making. And when Councilman Wadley spoke up, he talked about transparency, which was one of Mobley's big issues.
The city last year, I wrote some notes down last time, they got a transparency award from the Texas Comptroller.
We have this transparency award. Well, I contacted somebody in the Comptroller's office today and asked about this transparency award for local governments. And yes, they do have one. They've had one for about 4 or 5 years. And that means that they go above and beyond putting certain things on the website for the citizens to see as far as fiscal transparency on the website. The person I spoke to said they have some things on the website. They don't have debt or other things, so they don't have the full transparency award, but they do have a transparency award. But what that doesn't go into, folks, is that has nothing to do with Freedom of Information requests, the FOIAs. It has nothing to do with anything but putting your finance reports online, which is great. Don't get me wrong. We need that. But don't think of it as an open book as far as total transparency, because it's not.
Right. It can seem a little misleading. Like you said, it's great that that's there, but there's so much more information that could be there, and there's so much more information that citizens could have access to through FOIA. So just because they have this transparency award doesn't mean we're experiencing or receiving 100% transparency from these departments.
Even though Councilman Mobley is on his way out, he did speak up and state that, his campaign was really hard. It was hard on his wife, and he took some shots. And, like it or not, that's the way the campaign is on either side.
Because they're trying to take shots at a candidate.
Definitely through all my campaigns, I've had things on both sides. And I've been a recipient of some of Tony Mobley's remarks. So, Tony, hey, you can't have it both ways. Tony also spoke about the culture and the culture that's, they've brought into the city in the last few years.
I think we built a great culture around here, and I too apologize for some of the shots you guys have been taking.
And yes, some of the things are good. For example, the Parks and Recs, Aaron McLean, did a great job. He's doing a wonderful job. Please go back to the City Council meeting, watch it online at granbury.org, and watch Aaron McLean does a great job for Parks and Recs. And he should be, commended. And I'm glad he was up there to speak so we could all meet him. But getting back to Tony and the culture, there's been a culture of misinformation, about hiding things, and Tony even says in this council meeting that he talks about the good things in public, but the bad things he talks about in private.
I never point out the things that we need to work on because that's a private conversation.
That's not transparency.
No, that's the exact opposite.
And I see that he doesn't really want to get people in trouble or highlight certain issues. But, we don't grow if we don't learn by our mistakes.
And you have to know what those mistakes are in
Right.
order to grow from them.
And the citizens have a right to know if we have, certain areas that need some serious attention. The people have a right to know. And that's what I think Tony's forgetting in all this.
And that's part of that hidden culture and the lack of transparency that has been with the city council over the last few years underneath his, Mayor Pro Tem reign. And that's what the people don't like. And you can throw out this Comptroller Transparency Award all you want, but you know exactly what that means, and you know that you are hiding things from the citizens. And I think Jim Jarrett, the new mayor, is going to bring some of those things out, and I hope he really does for the public and the citizens.
Mike, you're right. Tony was up there, boo-hooing about the election and saying that, oh, it was so dirty. It was the dirtiest we've ever seen. Look, politics is a blood sport, and I think everybody knows that. And, it's something to consider before you go putting your name on a ballot.
It's gotten to that. It's always had a little bit of that, but now with social media and, like I said, if you can't take accountability and use it for what it is, and Trish and the rest of the gang call it negativity, there's some problems. So we really need to look at calling accountability what it is and look for solutions rather than using that straw man fallacy, because Trish did a great job at switching, what the agenda item really was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Corrigan kind of goes along with the whole straw man fallacy and telling the citizens don't let anyone tell you that you don't do a good job and they're all appreciated. But then in the same token, he goes and says that every interaction he's ever seen has been nothing but professional. So which is it?
And finally, the last straw man fallacy, idea we hear from is a public works director, Rick Crownover. And he says in there, he talks about the election. And he says, you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind to not know what's going on with the election.
You'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to hear a lot of the stuff that went on recently.
And frankly, he's right. Blue Shark brought all this sewage stuff to the forefront and made it transparent to the citizens. And that comes from Chris Kaufman and Rick Crownover. So those jobs really have to be, we have to, like I said, accountability. Let's find solutions. Let's get it done.
Another thing that Crownover got up there and said was, you know, talking about the attacks on the workers and stuff. Nobody is saying that the guys that work with the wastewater systems are doing a bad job. The rank and file of the city is actually phenomenal. But we are holding accountable people like Rick Crownover and Chris Kaufman.
Yeah, those people in the elected and appointed positions that are responsible for making sure these issues don't happen, or that we at least have a game plan in place if these issues do happen. If they're not doing their job, it would be different if this was like an overnight thing and we didn't see this coming. This has been decades in the making. We've known about this for a long time, so there's no excuse for it. Sometimes you just got to admit if you've made a mistake and be able to learn from it and move on.
And then at the end, Chris Kaufman, about 2 hours into it, not under 4.1 where the agenda item was, he starts speaking about the civility and the abrasiveness of citizens and how they interact with the city employees.
You know, it's just that kind of an abrasive environment that we're enduring, these employees are enduring. They've endured people coming to their workspace and yelling at them over their water bill or whatever. It's just ridiculous the way that people act, the civility.
And Mr. Kaufman, as state rep in my office, you have no room to talk about civility or abrasiveness. So when it comes to the citizens, that's part of the jobs of the employees. Unfortunately, we're going to have people like that. I had them in my office as an elected official. You'll continue to have people that just are that way, and you'll have to learn to deal with them. And if you can't deal with them, Mr. Kaufman, at your level, how do we expect people underneath you to deal with them in a safe and efficient manner?
Kaufman talked about, you know, the man-child remark that came out of the campaign. And, you know, it should be known that code enforcement, it was a code enforcement worker that, you know, unknowingly was on the receiving end of that. They worked directly for Chris Kaufman. Now, that whole process, there is no accountability, there's no communication, there's no documentation. They'll go by and steal a sign out of your yard without telling you anything. But if it's anything else that code enforcement does, they leave you a little letter or whatever on your door. And I just find it interesting that out of all the campaigns that we've seen here in Granbury, that they chose then to start enforcing that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up, that they just started enforcing it for this campaign. Whereas before, and I'm sure any homeowner that had a sign in an easement where it wasn't supposed to be would have gladly moved their sign had code enforcement knocked on their door or left a note letting them know, hey, this is an easement, you can't have it here. They would have gladly moved their sign. There was no need to go and steal any of those signs. And
one of those signs is actually on a historic lot. And to take that, because they give no easement to the city when it's a historic lot or historic site or whatever, to take that is a felony.
And let's get into another portion of the city manager's report. And I believe it's number 8 under update on various drainage matters within the city. Well, it's the lift station, and the matters are sewer, right? Waste in the streets. So they're going to take about $2.4 million from the rescue plan, and we've talked about that with the county, and they're going to fix one of the lift stations at Hewlett Park. So that is great, and that is accountability coming from you, the citizens, on this wastewater treatment facility. All the talk we're having about this, the lift stations, 23, number 7, that's because of you, the citizens, that they're starting to do this.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, and we see this in other races too, when you have a candidate that's saying, hey, we have a problem here and it needs to be fixed. I find it to be no coincidence that now the city is ready to do this when people like Kathy Reedy have been saying, you know, since the campaign started, hey, we need to fix these lift stations. The city themselves has said at one point that they were 30% over capacity, running at 130%. You can't have that long term. You know, so maybe that is the silver lining with all the campaigning that's been going on.
Yeah, and Councilman Rodriguez, he also asked about any other issues besides just this specific lift station, and they said that they are getting more reports of other issues that they're going to be looking into and adding to this budget as well. So it's definitely a win for the citizens. You got to keep up that accountability, keep making them do their job.
Right. We don't know the exact amount of money yet that we're getting from the federal government passed through the states for this rescue plan, but I hope almost all of it goes to fix the sewage infrastructure crisis, because that's what's needed most.
Yeah, especially when you are, what, the 8th or 10th fastest growing city in the nation. We got to have the infrastructure to support that.
Folks, what we can take from this episode today is the straw man fallacy that's turned from the city council and city manager onto the employees, which should never be done, and shame on the city council for doing that. And also, thank you citizens very much for pushing the issue of this infrastructure crisis and the sewage in the streets, because now they are finally listening. We've got some money for the rescue plan to put this into effect, and let's keep fixing our infrastructure. Thank you for watching the Blue Shark Show. Blue Shark is here for you, the citizens, shining a light on your appointed and elected officials. Shark Show out.